I know you're probably busy, so I'll keep this short, but I'm going to say something that you might not like, so please don't be offended. Being busy is not a badge of honor. It's a sign you have a lack of priorities. I know you likely have a million reasons why you never have enough time in the day, but my goal today is to give you a little bit of ammo to fight back, give you one or two reasons to find the time, be a little less busy, and reclaim ownership of your life. This is the Next Simple Step podcast. I'm Paul Goldsmith. My favorite thing about being an entrepreneur is the freedom it brings, specifically the freedom of time. Now, don't get me wrong. I still work, and I work a lot because I want to stay in business and grow my businesses, but I get to decide for the most part how best and how much of my time to invest in working. And I see value in taking breaks and time off, and it makes my work time more valuable. Sometimes I see too many friends just trying to grind it out, and in my opinion, it's counterproductive. At least it was for me. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I didn't know any better. I treated work no differently than before when I worked for someone else in an office. In fact, I rented a co-working space and dutifully drove to that space. It was called The Lodge in Franklin, Tennessee, every morning by 9, and then stuck around and didn't really leave until about 4:30 or 5. And it took me a full 2 years of doing this before, stuck in traffic, it occurred to me I was my own boss. I didn't have to do this. Everybody else in the rush hour traffic, they were answering to the man. I was the man. And divine revelation, I don't know what it was. It took me a full 2 years to figure it out, but I could actually leave earlier when there were fewer cars on the road. And then a little while later, I realized, wait a second, I don't have to go to an office. I can actually work from home. Now, this was before that was cool and everybody was doing it. Certainly, I see value in meeting and going to an office for collaboration. But for what I do, the majority of my work time is spent better at home. And whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you have a lot more time each day at your discretion than you realize. We all have the same 24 hours, and hopefully you're spending at least a third of that sleeping. That leaves 16 hours a day to work with. And for most of us, we don't work 12 and 16-hour days every day. I met someone the other day who drives 2 hours to work each and every day, and then 2 hours home. That's 4 hours in the car, and she does it because she loves her job. But I was just wondering, is there not a suitable home, someplace to live that's within an hour or less of the office, unless you just really love to drive all the time? I do feel that so many of us feel stuck and out of control when it comes to our time. And maybe you don't have a 2-hour drive, but you do find yourself at 2-hour lunches or sitting on 2-hour Teams or Zoom calls, or at least they feel like 2 hours because maybe you didn't need to be there after all. But with a little forethought and planning, maybe you could do fewer of those types of calls and meetings. Here's a crazy thought. What if you reclaimed an hour or 2 hours each day? What would you do with that time? If nothing comes to mind, that might be the key. Maybe that's exactly what you need to do to have a priority on your schedule each day and make sure it happens. And suddenly you'll find the time, you'll create the margin, you'll say no to the meeting that you didn't need to be at the first place. Figure out something you most want to do in this life. You're not promised tomorrow. All we have is today, and schedule it. What gets scheduled gets done. And that might exactly provide the motivation for you to find the time. That's the secret. Have something really important to do. Most of us show up on time to our wedding or the birth of our child. I realize not everyone, but most of us do. When something's important, you make it happen. And then we just kind of get lost in whatever we're doing and forget that we ultimately are in control of our time. Now, there are consequences if you tell somebody you're going to be at work at a certain time, then you have to do that. However, more things are negotiable than most people realize. You can say no to that meeting. You can say no to that picking your brain. I have a standing policy that I don't generally take meetings without agendas because I need to know the purpose for me to be in that meeting to go. I'm drinking out of my coffee mug today that says, I survived another meeting that should have been an email. Just a friendly reminder to myself that not everything requires a meeting. You are 100% responsible for your own time. And does anybody actually work a full 8 hours? I mean, you may be in the office for that amount of time, but I know for me, I don't have 8 hours of mental capacity to focus. And I think the average office worker gets about 3 hours of actual work done. And there's an interesting theory about the 8-hour workday that I saw from David Kane. He is a blogger, spent 9 months backpacking across New Zealand, and then he returned home and went back to his 9-to-5 job. It was a sudden transition from roaming the world to an office job, and he said it revealed something to him. Here's what he wrote. As technologies and methods advanced, workers in all industries became able to produce much more value in a short amount of time. You would think this would lead to shorter workdays. But the 8-hour workday is too profitable for big business, not because the amount of work people get done in 8 hours, but because it makes for such a purchase-happy public. Keeping free time scarce means people pay a lot more for convenience, gratification, and other relief they can buy. It keeps them watching television and its commercials. It keeps them unambiguous outside of work. We've been led into a culture that has been engineered to leave us tired, hungry for indulgence, willing to pay a lot for convenience and entertainment, and most importantly, vaguely dissatisfied with our lives so that we continue wanting things we don't have. We buy so much because it always seems like something is still missing. Western economies, particularly that of the United States, have been built in a very calculated manner on gratification, addiction, and unnecessary spending. We spend to cheer ourselves up, to reward ourselves, to celebrate, to fix problems, to elevate our status, and to alleviate boredom. Can you imagine what would happen if all of America stopped buying so much unnecessary fluff that just doesn't add a lot of lasting value to our lives? The economy would collapse and never recover. All of America's well-publicized problems, including obesity, depression, pollution, and corruption, are what it costs to create and sustain a $1 trillion economy. For the economy to be quote-unquote healthy, America has to remain unhealthy. Healthy, happy people don't feel like they need much they don't already have. And that means they don't buy a lot of junk, don't need to be as entertained as much, and they don't end up watching a lot of commercials. The culture of the 8-hour workday is big business's most powerful tool for keeping people in the same dissatisfied state where the answer to every problem is to buy something. The perfect customer is dissatisfied but hopeful, uninterested in serious personal development, highly habituated to the television, working full-time, earning a fair amount, indulging their free time, and somehow just getting by. Did you sense an element of truth there? Healthy, happy people don't feel like they need much they don't already have. Oh, that hit home. We all have a purpose problem. We want our lives to matter. You lead a purposeful life by doing purposeful things and not just going with the flow. You have agency. So let me ask you again, if you weren't so busy, if you weren't so exhausted all the time, what would you do differently? Would you travel to someplace new or take a course, start a business, maybe a podcast, garden? I don't know what it is for you, but I sense you have a creative angst, an idea of what you might do if only you had the time. We all have a creative, yearning to express something deep inside us. And I've just found too few people actually get around to doing it. It makes us cynical. It makes us consumers. We were made to create. We're creative beings. I just want to encourage you to make the space to dream again and take control of your time to the extent that you can and not get fired. I was inspired for this particular podcast by a new feature on the Strava app. I love using Strava. It tracks my runs, and they just came out with a brand new feature that says hide start time. And when they shared the hide start time feature on Instagram, they added the caption, "Secret lunch runs during work? Go for it. You can now hide the start times of your activities anytime you want." It's a little funny, but it's also a little sad because I just find it sad that people have to hide the fact that they might go for a run during the day. I can tell you firsthand that doing so makes you more productive and more creative. I do it, and it breaks up my workday when I go for a midday run. Now, there's a caveat. If you're an hourly worker, like the folks who work in our restaurant, you can't go for a run on the clock because you have to be there at certain times. You owe it to your employer to be working when you're on the clock. But so many people are just in an office for a full 8 hours and not necessarily productive, but they're just doing this thing I call performance theater. So what if you negotiated a 2-hour break in your day to go for a run and have time to shower before you get back to work? How much more productive would you be in the afternoon? Okay, maybe running's not your thing, but you get what I mean. Take control, renegotiate your time to do the things that are most critical to you, that are important, because you're not going to live forever and nobody's going to dictate this for you. They're just going to ask you to work more and spend more time in the office. Stop the performance theater. You are employed to get a result. And if that's the case, why does it matter how much time it takes to get the best possible result? At the end of the day, that's what matters for salaried office workers. I had a client one time ask me how many hours per month we were going to work on their company's project if they hired us. Now, we outlined the deliverables, what we would do for the pay that we would receive. And my response was, if we can help you get $100,000 in return for 40 hours per month, or we could do $500,000 in returns for 20 hours, which would you prefer? Clearly, the greater return with less time is preferred every time. And at the end of the day, you just have to outline it in those terms. And the client was happy with that. They said, yeah, we'll take the greater return. We ultimately don't care how much time you spend as long as you help us get to the result we want to get. You don't have to hide your lunchtime runs or your creative project. I encourage you to renegotiate your time with employers or other people in your life. Optimize your life to create the space so you can fully express yourself, to take care of yourself. Self-care gets such a bad rap, but people who choose to be unhealthy are not super helpful to the rest of us when you're down for the count. Take care of yourself so you can be there for your family and friends later. Owning a gym, I hear the excuses all the time. Well, I would work out, I just don't have the time. Really? Just be honest with yourself. You're choosing not to prioritize your health. And I get it. There's fears around going to the gym. The point is, the best workout is the one you'll do, but you have to take care of yourself because no one's going to do it for you. You have to prioritize your health because after 40, you start to lose 1% to 2% of your muscle mass per year. They've got a name for it. It's called sarcopenia. And the only way to stop it, to actually gain muscle, is to actively train. I was inspired watching the Olympics, in particular the track and field. No surprise there. Noah Lyles is one of the sprinters, and he won the gold medal in the 100-meter sprint. And then a few days later, he ran the 200-meter sprint, expected to win there. But he got bronze, which is still a remarkable feat in the Olympics, to come in third, and found out after he won the medal that he had tested positive for COVID. Remarkable. The dude still ran at lightning speed, came in third place with COVID. It reminds me of the time that Michael Jordan played in the NBA Finals with the flu. And guys like that just go to show. I mean, they have remarkable talent to overcome. Great reminder to us all that being fit and focused creates margin. So when you do get sick, you're not down for the count. Life happens. Everyone gets sick at some point or worse. And it's why it's so critical to be proactive with your health. Build up as much health margin as possible. Train every day like your life depends on it, because I believe it does. I'll just close with a question. If you had an hour today with no other responsibilities or expectations, what would you choose to do with that time? Answer that seriously, and then the follow-up. What's stopping you from making that happen? Thank you so much for listening to the Next Simple Step podcast. Don't forget to go for a run, get some sun, and have fun. I'll talk to you next time.